we go. It is 7 o'clock. I'm going to get started here. I've got two camera angles set up here, so hopefully they both continue to work and that it will uh, be smooth. I've never done this before. So we're going to talk a bit about seed starting and um, kind of what is how to do it. It's one of those things where a lot of people are really nervous about, and some people try it and they have great luck. Then they try it the next year and everything dies, and they don't know why. And some people, they've tried it a bunch of times and it never works, or um, there are a bunch of different scenarios. I've got a handful of questions here that I collected ahead of time, and some of those are going to be very helpful for organizing this. So I'm just going to start by a little bit of why start our own plants. And there are a handful of reasons, and one of them is just the cost. So if I switch back to this tray here this is all rhubarb, and each one of these plants uh, in the spring is worth, I think last year they were $13 at the local nursery, and there are a couple hundred of them in this tray, and it cost me $0. It cost me a little bit of soil, but the seeds I collected from my plants. So when you look at that and you realize that, you know, a little bit of work, and I've got thousands of dollars worth of plants here, that adds up really quickly. So that's a really big thing. But even if you're just starting a few plants, if you look at the cost of a package of, say, tomatoes or something, so I'm just going through some of my seeds here. So that's a pack of yellow brandywine tomatoes from the Incredible Seed Company. So they are where I get a lot of my fruit and nut seeds from, and I quite like them. They are uh, great service, great seeds, but this pack, it says it contains approximately 30 seeds. They tend to put extra in it, so it's probably closer to 50 seeds. And I think it was $3. So $3 for this, and every single tomato plant is worth about $3. So even if I only had 10% success rate, that's three plants, that's $10. So this $3 worth of seed turned into $10. And if your success rate isn't great, start more. But hopefully with this lesson, you'll be able to have good success rates. So cost is a really big factor. But a couple other things is, one is right now I have a bunch of green here, and behind the camera, the my laptop camera here, I've got racks of, I've got a whole bunch of about 3,000 asparagus plants. I've got another couple thousand rhubarb plants. Peppers are just getting started. I have a bunch of fruit trees that are in there. I've got some basil getting started, some more peppers over there, and a small batch of tomatoes that are just, I'm just checking to make sure that they are germinating well because they're old seeds. So, so it's really nice in the middle of winter. I don't know about you, but I mean, it's been negative 34, I think, this week, and it's just dark and it's not nice outside. So having something like this is nice. Just a little hint of summer. So that's another really big reason. It gets me really excited to start the new year. And then another thing is just the selection of varieties. So I grabbed, this is a yellow brandywine, and the regular brandywine was kind of one of the tomatoes that started bringing back the heirloom tomato kind of craze, because it is a really delicious tomato, and it's, you're not going to get anything in the stores that tastes anything like it, and most of the common varieties that I get, uh, they don't compare. So uh, This is a yellow version, and then I have pink and red versions as well. And oftentimes they'll be, big enough that I stick it on a piece of bread and then I have to cut the tomato off the outside so that I can get to the sandwich. And you're not going to get that anywhere at the stores. Then I've got other things like, where was it? I have, so the mortgage lifter is a really productive tomato. You're not going to get that one at the store. There's some more yellow brandywine, the red brandywine, and one big one is the chocolate cherry tomato is my favorite cherry tomato. I've never seen it in a nursery. It's not one of the common varieties. So by starting my own seeds, I get to have all these varieties, but I also get to have, I've got tarragon and I've got different types of basils, and I've got hyssop and all sorts of other herbs. So all these things that I wouldn't necessarily be able to get by shopping at maybe at some of the local nurseries, but definitely not at the box store nurseries. So yeah, we got the cost, that little taste of spring here, the different varieties, and another thing is just the food security. So all of those tomatoes varieties that I mentioned, you can save seeds from again. So you can't save seeds from every tomato and have it taste like the tomato that it came from, but you can, you'll still get a tomato, and so that's still worth planting. But these ones, you know what you're going to get, and you just take the nicest fruit off of the nicest plant, and you save some of the seeds, and some of them require slightly different treatments. The tomatoes, you just kind of stick them in some water and let them ferment for a couple days. It gets a little coating off the outside, and then you have seeds, which means that this one pack of yellow brandywine seeds, so if it has 30 plants in it, and I went and, say I only got, a friend gave me 3 seeds, and 2 of them germinated, and I got some seeds from that, or some tomatoes. Those 2 seeds can turn into many thousands of seeds for the next year, and I can still eat the tomato. So you don't lose out on it. And with some of the seed shortages that we've had, it's worth saving some seeds. And so that's why you might want to do it. But what do you need? So I'm just going to switch this back so you can see hands as well. So there are a number of ways of going about it. One of the questions I got was, I can't afford pots or lights or even seeds. How can I start on a shoestring budget? So one of the things I'm going to say is you don't need all of the fancy trays that we're going to talk about. Last year, I started a lot of things in, this is just like a oat milk container. I just cut the top off and I planted things in there. Yogurt containers, I've made pots out of newspaper, I've used mason jars, I've used all sorts of things. And the first year that I did my gardening here, my pots were offcuts of 4-inch ABS, so drain plumbing. I just cut it, I stuck a piece of newspaper in the bottom so the soil wouldn't fall out, and then I stuck them in my window. No lights, nothing. I watered them just with I think it was a mason jar. I didn't have any money to spare, so that's what I used. I bought some seeds, I bought some soil, but you can also do that without those. Starting without soil is a little more difficult because you're going to want to have some sort of soil to get started in, and I'm using, this is just a Pro Mix here with some wood shavings on top to keep the moisture in, but you can use soil from your yard. It's not going to be the greatest for them, but it's probably going to work, and really that's what it's about. When it comes down to buying seeds, if you wanted to have a few varieties of tomatoes, So I'm just going to grab a couple varieties of tomatoes and some bergamot. So if I was to go and buy all of these myself, that might be, 12 bucks or something. And just realized I grabbed all the ones that I grabbed are from Incredible Seeds. Most of the ones in this bag are. That'd be like 12 bucks. And 12 bucks for a lot of people isn't a lot of money, but 12 bucks for you might be. If you can get enough money for one of these, that has 30 seeds. Most people aren't going to plant 30 varieties. So if you get one of those and you have another friend that gets 30 of the yellow pear and another friend that gets 30 Amish paste and then another friend that gets 100 bergamot, lemon mint bergamot. So you each spent $3-4 and then you can trade. So I can take a few seeds out of here and I can save a couple of those seeds for myself and pass them on to this person. And everyone can swap a little bit, which means for $4, realistically, you could do this between, 15 people easily, and everyone would have enough of each variety for their garden. And you'd be able to have a really good garden for $4. So see about finding some people who can do that. Also, if you can't do that, just grab a tomato from the grocery store when you're there, cut it open, and save the seeds. If you can get one that says it's an heirloom variety, then you're reasonably likely to get something close to it. If you get just some generic red tomato, you're still going to get a red tomato. It just might be juicier. It might be more of the meaty flesh and less of the pulpy seed portion. It might be bigger. It might be smaller. You don't really know what you're going to get, but it's going to be a tomato. So buy a tomato, scoop out the seeds, use the tomato in your cooking, and then continue from there. I'm just looking to see what else I had mentioned. Yes, those are all the things that I said for starting on basically $0. You can get some soil from your dig it from outside. If you're struggling to get things from outside, grab a shovel or something like this and just dig away. Grab the back of a hammer. Right now, I don't think that this is my hori. It's for digging in the garden. I don't think that I'd be able to get this through the ground right now, but if I was desperate, I would try. So that is the basics of what you can do, and now I'm going to show you a little bit of what a nicer setup can be. I'm also going to pour my tea. I'm going to set these aside over here. So the first thing is, what are you going to plant your seedlings in? So this is just a used container from someone else bought a geranium in a 3.5-inch pot. You can use this again. They're pretty cheap. They're not going to last very long, but they will last for a while. And during May, when everyone's planting in our area, you can get these for free all over the place. Milk containers, yogurt containers, margarine containers, any of those type of things work. But this is what a lot of people are going to get into. So this is they call it a 10-20 tray. So it is 10 inches across this way and 20 inches this way. And you see, I picked this one up at Home Depot when they were just wanting to get rid of them all. So they were 50 cents a piece, and I bought a big old stack of them. But they are pretty cheap. This one is brand new. It doesn't have any holes in it. The one at the bottom of this stack is also brand new. I just pulled it out of the out of my stack, and it has a hole in it already. So it is cheap. Then there are things like this. So this is a seed starting tray. This one has 512 spots where I can start seeds. And they're teeny tiny. You know, they're not very thick. I'm just going to switch to just that camera. So they're very small this way. My finger just fits in, and it's only about a knuckle deep. And these are considered heavy duty, but if you look at it, those are broken already. It does not take long. So you can hear it, they crinkle, but if you take care of them, they'll last a fair while. Most people don't need one with this many holes, partially because you're not going to start 500 plants, and partially because these tiny little cells dry out really quickly, so you're likely to kill your plants. The bigger the container you start with, generally, the more forgiving it's going to be. So we go up to this one. This is a 288, I believe it is. This is still smaller than what most people would necessarily need, but it is a better size. It's a little bit deeper. At I don't know, I think it's a 1/4 inch deeper, but it's a lot wider. And I can start a bunch of seeds in here, and then with these ones, once they get a little bit bigger, then I just move them up to one of the other trays. And then these are the other sizes that I commonly use. 1, 2, and 3. So this one, what do I have? I have 50, 72, and 128, I think it is. So the 50 cell here, you can get ones that are, what is this? Yeah, that are 50 or 72 cells that are in that same cheap material, and they're not going to be super durable, but they're gonna work. And this one is by Bootstrap Farmer, and there's no crinkling. Oh, outside later, Muggsy. My dog's using his button to ask to go outside. Actually, no, I'm just gonna be right back real quick. I'm gonna put him out, and then I'll have to let him back in a moment. Sorry about that. I try to respond to him. He has a bunch of buttons that he uses to ask for things, and I want him to use them, so I need to listen to them. Yeah, these are Bootstrap Farmer. They're a lot more durable. They're about $7, and the way that I would use these is I would start my seeds in one of the smaller ones, either this size or one of the two that I showed earlier. And then once the seeds are big enough that they probably should get potted up from there, I'll move them to something like this, and they'll just stay in here right until it's time to plant them out. And I'll go out to the garden, pull out my seedling, and stick it in the ground. And so those are the trays. Those are options. They're not required. Down. What I did last year for all of my tomatoes and everything was this method. This one is just the 1020 tray, and this is the brand new one that has a hole in it so it won't hold water. So that's kind of how useless these trays are. They're very delicate. There we go. So what I did is I just planted a whole bunch of these all in one spot, and then when it came time to plant them up, I would just come in here, gently tease them apart, and then I would take these and I'd stick them in the new tray, or I'd stick them in, you know, a solo cup or something. So this soil is very dry. These plants are kind of wilty because I'm about to pot them up. So I wanted the soil to be a little drier so it would come apart easier. But yeah, there we go. There's one plant. I can take this one. I can stick it into a bigger pot. I'm just going to stick some soil in there now. I've got some right under here. There we go. I just stuck some soil in there. I have to water it. But now that's in a pot and it can stay there. So probably going to gift this one to someone because I'm not going to use it in that container. Last year I potted them all up into solo cups. If you are around, youth events or school events or parties of some sort, you can get a bunch of these for free. But I ended up buying some. I used them for 3 years now, and I just took a big stack of them, and then I ran a drill right through the bottom for drainage, and then I plant into them, and most of them had writing on the side of what was planted in them. And then I think I put 18 of those in each one, 15 or 18 of those in each one of these 10 by 20 trays. So I'm going to set this over here. So those are optional things. Other optional things are grow lights. So which ones do I have here still? I've got this one, and I've got, just gonna pull one of these down. This type, and then I'm just gonna grab the other type of bulb that I got right over here, and I'm gonna let my dog in real quick. Back inside, here is my other option. So this one here, I'm going to switch back to this camera. There we go. This one here is by Mackenzie Seeds. I think my parents bought it at one point, and they just don't use it. They've got a really good south-facing window, and they don't need to use grow lights, so why would they? And this one, I don't know if this one is LED or what, but so that's one option. This one came with a stand. I don't know where it is. These ones are also LEDs, and they just have a little on-off switch here. These ones are normally like $60, but again, I bought these ones the same time I bought these trays for 50 cents. I was going in regularly waiting for these to come on sale, and they went on for $5 a piece. So at $5 a light, it was a no-brainer. I picked up, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I think I picked up 10 of them. So 10 of them for $50. It's a lot of money, but it's also... One moment. I gotta show you something. Inside here, where's the camera? That looks like a seed for a marigold inside of this. I'm not sure how. Oh well. So $50, that's 10 seedlings. So that's well worth the cost to me because I'm growing a lot of these. What I started with were these. They're just Noma brand LED grow lights, so full spectrum. and this was $5. I stuck it in a regular light socket and grew with it. And then at one point I had a whole bunch of plants in my bathroom, and I switched out my bathroom lights for these. And I don't know if it's great to be under grow lights all the time, but I wasn't in there. I'm not spending all day in the bathroom, so my plants got to use that light with existing sockets. I didn't have to buy anything other than a couple of these. They also come in, I'm just going to unscrew this one. Floodlight version, and I think these ones were $5 and these ones were $8. I don't know what they are now. That was a couple years ago, so probably like $20 and $100. Inflation's not quite that bad, but it feels like it. So that's an option. I also have all of those running through a smart power bars, so I can go and I can turn off lights, and I have them all on schedules, and that is a luxury. Again, I got that because they were on clearance, and it made life really easy for me. I have the same thing for my recording studio, that I can turn everything on like that. So, as for shelving, the first year I had scrap wood from renovations that I made shelves in a window, and it was ugly, but it worked. And then at one point I had on this wall a whole bunch of shelves on it, just scrap wood and brackets. And that was what I used for that year. I also had a shelf over my washing machine, and I grew some there. Now I have a bunch of actually, I'm using a part of one right now. These plastic shelves. So I just moved part of one here to use as a table. And again, I bought these when they were on clearance. They're plastic, which isn't necessarily ideal, but they work. I store them inside. Every year, as soon as I'm done all my seed starting, I pack them up, stick a little strap on them, and I set them away, so that way they're not out where they're going to get broken. So I expect them to last for, decades or most of my life. One other thing I did forget to mention that you can use. This was a microgreen kit, and I have neglected. I put some lettuce in here, and I've neglected it, but it's starting to recover. I've got some lettuce growing in there, and these are usually more money than I would spend on them, but they were again on clearance. So you notice a theme here. I typically buy things when they are on super sale. So these ones I think were $2 a piece. So I got the tray, the cover, a packet of seeds, and some, I think it was cocoa coir, however you pronounce that stuff. So that was another option. If you see those going on clearance, then that's a reasonable price, and having the clear covers can help you keep your seeds from drying out at first, which is really handy if you're not as obsessed about your plants as I am, because I'm in here too many times a day. I also start a lot of tree seeds, so I have these. They're Muggsy, outside later. Just came in, silly dog. He might be meaning for something else, so I might hear another word soon. But these are a really, really heavy tray designed specifically for growing trees. This one has a bunch of Kentucky coffee trees in here. Label everything. The only thing that I don't label is my rhubarb and my asparagus, and this year I'm labeling my asparagus because I have 2 varieties. So even that I'm labeling now, and that's because it's so easy to be like, oh yeah, I'll remember what this is. You won't. You won't. And if you can, label every single one, because you will probably lose some of those seeds. So that's the range from from zero money to start up to you have a decent budget but not an outrageous amount. Oh, my other lights that were scheduled to turn off just turned off. And I think they're on this bar. Crowbar. There we go. So that's a range. There's also things you'll see, these heating mats. You don't really need these for just about anything. I got them this year as a nice treat because I got a really good deal on them. And these just provide a little bit of extra heat underneath your tray. So you stick these down, you turn it on, you put your tray on top, and then it's going to warm it from the bottom, which helps certain plants to germinate. So if you're starting your seeds indoors, then you probably don't need that because it's going to be warm enough for most things to germinate. If it's not warm enough, just start them, above your fridge or something. That's usually the warmest place in a lot of people's houses. Another option is if you have radiators, pick a height above that because it's easy to be too close and to dry them out really quickly. But that's another option. And I've been gardening for quite a while and I just got those this year and I still consider them a luxury. So now that's the comparison of all the different containers. I think I did mention just the difference in quality if you are buying these trays. Again, this is, you can just hear it crinkling. And then this is by Bootstrap Farmer. I ordered them from Indoor Farmer because they were the closest to me that had them. And these ones are much more solid. Now, for seed starting, you're going to need some sort of medium to grow it in, a soil or something like that. So here, I'm going to move these out of the way. This is Pro Mix. There's a little bit of plant medium in here because I was potting up some really young rhubarb. So this is their Pro Mix with the mycorrhizal fungi in it. And one of the big things for seed starting is you don't want a lot of big chunks. So here, most of this is it's really light, it's fluffy. Zoom in here. There aren't any big sticks or anything for seedlings to fight with. Because if you look at, this seedling here, it doesn't take much to break it and to stop it, and that's once it's a little bit bigger. If this was just germinating and it was a smaller seed, then it might not be able to get past something like, this isn't actually a chunk, it's just like a solid piece, but it might not be able to get past that, and that might kill your seed because it can't get to the light quick enough. So I typically just use Pro Mix. I'm looking at things that are peat free because there are issues with peat moss. The problem is all the alternatives that are popular right now, like the cocoa coir or choir, or I hear it pronounced a bunch of different ways. All of those travel a really long distance, so I don't know what is worse. If it's worse for me to try and find some of this that is a piece of walnut, I think. I haven't had walnut. Oh, this bag was stored outside. The squirrels put some walnut in there. So I don't know if it's better for the environment to ship a bunch of material all the way across the world or not. So for now, I still have a bunch of this. I'm going to use it, and I'm going to do my research. But the big thing is you don't want big chunks, and it's also beneficial to have it be a little bit more sterile. So not using a pure compost because there's a lot of bacteria in there, and that can cause some of the young plants to get attacked by the bacteria and to rot. So nice light soil. You'll see a lot of, there'll be like vermiculite, or I'm forgetting the name of it right now, the white stuff. I'll remember it later. Those are oftentimes in there just to make it lighter and airier and for water control. Another thing you can put in there is this is, I don't want to mix it in with the rest of my soil, but this is biochar mixed with vermicompost, so it's worm castings, worm manure, and the biochar will provide a lot more control over the water. It'll take longer for it to dry out, and it's also a nice light material if it's broken up small. So those are all options. You can make your own soil for starting out. You can just take it, be nice and easy, get a pre-started mix for your first time. And so I'm going to actually start planting something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here. I'm just going to move my tray of plants there, and my tea. This is a boot tray. I got it on sale. Surprise. I bought a few of these because they fit my tree ones really well. I can fit 4 of them in here, I believe. And then I can put the water in here and water them from the bottom, which is really convenient. But I also use them for, what am I going to start? Containing all of my soil. So I'm going to take my soil, I'm going to fill my trays. Actually, I might come over here, and I'm going to get a little bit on my floor, but you'll be able to see it better, so I'll just clean it up. I'm not packing it in there, but I'm just kind of moving it around, making sure it kind of gets to the bottom of the holes. I just find if I move back and forth a few times, it generally does a better job of filling the holes. Okay, I'm actually not going to start that many, and I don't need to start anything today, so everything I'm starting today is just for the purposes of this video. I'm going to use, I usually use a pencil, but in this case, I'm going to zoom out again a little bit here. Actually, I'll just start over here where you can see. I'm just going to make a little hole, and I'm going to start some tomatoes, I guess, because they're a nice, easy one. I don't have to do much with the tomatoes. I'm going to put this one back up. There we go. So I've got some old tomato stock from last year. This is Prudent Purple. It was not quite as good as the Brandywine, but the same general type of plant. So I'm not gonna bother growing them again. So I don't really care about these seeds. I'm just gonna stick one of those seeds in each hole. And general rule of thumb is, let's show the, is it gonna focus? There we go. So the width, the longest direction of your seed, you generally want to plant about twice as deep as that. But the easiest way to check, these are from Vessey's, and it says, so 2 to 3 seeds per cell in 1 by 1 inch, which that's about what this size is. And then they want you to, so you plant 3 per cell and then you thin it afterwards. And they typically recommend just pull the extra one out, but you can pull the extra one out and plant it in another container. And then they say cover with 1/4 inch of soil. So these are, yeah, they're about 1/8 of an inch. So 2 of those they're a little less than 1/8 of an inch, but it's 2 of these is close to 1/4 of an inch. So I'm just going to stick a couple seeds in each one of these. Here we go. And then what I'll end up doing, I'm going to mark these ones afterwards, but I'm going to mark where they are. I'm just going to put my soil back on top of it and on this one here. And then now I've got planted, actually I'm going to put it on this side so I know that I'm from here to here I've got tomatoes. And I'm probably going to have to look back at this video because I'm going to forget. They are purple tomatoes. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tomato plants planted, but that soil's dry. So usually what I'll do is I'll mix this soil with water first, and then I'll mix it with a bunch of water, and then when I put it on the tray, I'll just squeeze out all the extra moisture and then put it back in. You don't have to squeeze super hard. You can take a fair bit of moisture at the beginning. It's when they start getting a little older that you want to make sure they're not too wet because you can drown the plants. So the roots need access to oxygen in order to grow. So that is a couple of those, but there are some varieties of seeds that are a little bit more involved. For example, where did I just put my pepper seeds? I saved some pepper seeds specifically for this, and I brought them over specifically for this. Oh, they fell down. These are jalapeno pepper seeds that I saved, and jalapeno peppers, they don't need anything to germinate well, but they do have a bit of a weakness where they are very likely to get moldy before they germinate, and then your plant's then competing with mold. So actually I'm not going to start that many because I've already got a few hundred of these started. Outside later, Muggsy. So how do you stop them from molding? I've got this spray bottle, and it's about 1% hydrogen peroxide. So I had 3% hydrogen peroxide in that brown bottle in my cupboard. So I mixed 1 part of that to 2 parts water, and I'm just going to spray a little bit of that on here. So now that's going to try and kill any of the little, any of the bacteria, any of the fungi, any of those things. So I'm just going to fold it up. It's just enough that they're wet, and then that'll kind of help wake them up. I'm going to wet it just a little bit more so it stays wet a bit longer. And then I'm going to stick that back in a bag. And I'm going to stick this, you can either stick it on something like a heat mat, or I just put mine on top of the fridge and check it starting in a little less than a week, and eventually they'll start germinating. I'm just going to check the ones I've got over here and see if I can show you what that looks like. My seed starting room's a mess because I needed room to mount my cameras to things. So I reorganized everything and stole a shelf. So these are the ones that I started earlier. And I don't know if any of them are starting yet. I don't see any starting yet. I thought it might be a little bit too early. So what we're looking for is on these, that way, you're going to start to see a little white tail. I wonder if it can't focus quite that close. You're going to start to see a little bit of a white tail on this. Will it focus now? Oh. And that's just a little bit of a root coming out. So what I do is once I see that little root coming out, then I'll take my pencil or whatever I'm using and I'll make some holes. And I've already got a few hundred of these started. I'm just going to put one of those in each hole. Again, about a 1/4 inch down. I've found that they're typically not all that picky. I mean, seeds are designed so that they fall off the fruit rots away, or they get eaten by an animal or whatever, and then they grow. They don't all grow, but some of them will grow. So I'm going to cover those up with about a 1/4 inch of soil again, and just mark where those are. There we go. So then that's pepper started. I haven't watered this, so I'm going to show you a really handy trick for watering. If you only have a few plants to water, you can use something like this. This is the one that I use for my mushroom cultivation, so it's currently set to a mist. But you can put it on a little bit more of a stream than that. What I like to use is this. So this is, a lot of people use them for pesticides or herbicides. This one has never seen any of that. It's only been used for compost tea and for water. I don't think anything else has ever been in it. If it is, it's something to help my garden. So I give it a pump, and it comes with a wand so that you can mist things and spray all your plants. But if you just have this portion, then I can water. And I'm just pushing the trigger down a little bit, and it's pretty empty, so. And ideally on the first water, you kind of just want to water until it goes right through. Usually what I'll do is I'll water before I actually start doing this. Again, I'll get all the soil wet, squeeze out most of the water, and then stick it on. So that's what I use for watering most things, and it's really handy because when I pump it up a bit more, I can come up here and I can water all my plants really well. Anything that is in a tray like this, oh, I don't have a tray under it right now. Anything that's in a tray like this, you can bottom water, except that this one has the hole in it. But I just start filling this. I'm going to stop there because otherwise I'm going to end up in the hole. And then when this is in there, the bottom of these cells will just touch the water. So I'm going to get rid of that water. And that's the problem with cheap things. It's cheap, disposable plastic. And I don't like it, and I'm trying to avoid it in my nursery as much as I can. So I've got the stuff that I bought before I started being a nursery, and I just have some of that left over. So yeah, the peppers are a little bit tricky. When you are checking on them again, if there is a little bit of mold, then I would just grab my little spray bottle again, give it a little bit of a spray, and then that you'll see the mold start kind of foaming up, and it'll eat the mold, it'll kill it all, and you'll be able to keep those seeds. So that's how some of the basic seeds are started. Some things need a little bit of other treatment. So I'm hoping that I'm going to have people on this page that are starting fruit and nut trees. They need stratification. They need to simulate a winter. So these are pawpaw seeds. So the pawpaw, Asimina triloba, is it's like a native fruit. These can never dry out, otherwise the seeds die. But these need to go be in the cold for a while to simulate a winter so that they'll wake up in the spring. And so these ones, I stuck them in a bag, stuck them in the fridge for about 100 days, and then I'll pull them out, I'll leave them in a warm place, and because they're such big seeds, and they only have about 80% germination rate, and I've got 700 or so that I'm going to plant, plus the ones that I'm giving away. I don't want to waste a whole bunch of space for ones that don't grow, and they take a few months to come up. So I just wait for them to start sprouting. Once there's a little tail on here, I stick that in the pot, cover it up, and away we go. So anything that says it needs a cool, moist stratification, that just means you're going to stick it in the fridge. You're usually going to soak it for 24 hours, stick it in the fridge. Some of them need warm and cold, so they might sit on top of the fridge for 90 days and then in the fridge for 90 days. Whatever it is, it's really a lot easier than you might think it is. I mean, nature does it on its own. So if nature does it outside, then we can probably figure out how to copy it. And when in doubt, start more. Where is my notes to make sure I stay on a track? So yeah, depth is going to be, a lot of them are just kind of a quarter-ish inch. Some things like beans and such that you're going to start outside will be a bit deeper. Basically anything with a bigger seed is going to be planted deeper. Oh, another special treatment that some things need. I don't have any here that need it now. I think I've done all of them that did need it. Is scarification. So some things the seeds are designed to go through the digestive system of an animal, and it breaks up the really hard coating on the outside. So you can do that just by rubbing it on some sandpaper or using nail file or nail clippers. Some people also have really good success just pouring really hot water over it. Speaking of which, my tea. So now we've got our seeds in this tray. How do we keep them alive? So I'm gonna go back to, I'm gonna go to here. So what typically kills them? We'll have a couple of things, and this comes with one of the questions that I received from a lot of people. No one's on the live. I think pretty much everyone said that they were going to have to watch the replay. So it makes it really efficient for me. I don't even know if anybody is here. I don't see anything in the chat box. So, the question that I received basically went something like this. My seeds started well, but they always ended up dying. What am I doing wrong? There are a few common things. One is overwatering. If I take this and I just keep on pouring water on here and I keep it soaking wet, then there's not going to be any room for oxygen in the soil. So right now, when we look at this, there's a lot of space in this for air. And this is too dry, so we need more moisture because this is going to cause the plant to dry out. But we don't want so much moisture that it's just one big ball of soup. And that's because we need a lot of the soil life and the plants need oxygen. So overwatering is the easiest way to kill a plant. I think it's probably the most common way for houseplants to die. And my method for watering is I will wait until I see things start to wilt a little bit. So these here are about as dry as you'd want them to get. They're starting to get kind of floppy, especially the ones on the outside where it dries off quicker. And that's just because I'm going to be planting them up. So I wanted the soil to be dry. But typically once I start seeing this, then I know, okay, the plant's a little bit stressed, and that's going to encourage it to grow roots deeper to try and get to the water, but I want to make sure there's water there. So at this point, I would water it. And then just with practice, I mean, as long as there are drain holes in the bottom of your soil and you're using a decent potting mix, you're not going to overwater it from one watering session. So just put some water on there, let it drain through, and you'll be okay. We don't want to run water through the soil all the time because any of the water that comes to the top is going to come out the bottom. You're going to notice that it's a little bit darker. It's kind of like coffee. When you're making coffee and you pour the water over your coffee grounds, it takes all what you coffee drinkers would call the good stuff, and it takes that all with it. In this case, it takes the nutrients with it that we need. So we don't want to have water running through all the time, but the first few times you water, that's a really easy way to figure out, okay, that's how much water it takes to water it all the way through, and then you can water it a little bit less after that, and then wait for it to start to wilt again. And the thing I like about this method is it means that you're going to check your plants more often. So it's really easy to to overwater. It's also easy to underwater because you've just forgotten to check on your plants. So if you know that you are underwatering them, then you're going to check them more often. And if you're like me, you're going to check them every chance you get. Every time I look up, I'm looking up at my asparagus and rhubarb and peppers and some kales and fruit trees and stuff, and I'm looking at them all the time. And I'm a little more obsessed than you need to be, though. So overwatering, underwatering, another big thing, especially when they are younger, is called dampening off, and it's just bacteria. You'll have your seedling that is it's growing. This one was underneath the tray and it's kind of dead anyways. But your seedling was growing, then all of a sudden it just kind of falls over, just like that. Just gets sick, and that's usually caused by bacteria. They'll look like they're doing good and they'll just fall over. Uh, this one is also a good example of a leggy plant, which is, you can see how long this is. The rhubarb shouldn't be that long before it starts to split off. It should be a lot more like, you know, well, it should just kind of be this portion here. So all of this extra bit here is just it reaching for daylight. And that makes it a lot more susceptible to getting bent and broken. It's a lot more weak because it's just desperately growing for light. So that's another thing that can be an issue is light. So uh, if you don't have enough light, you're going to find that they're just trying to shoot up. They're trying to get to something. So you want to have the light, and if you're doing something like this, you want it as close to the plants as you can. Like if your plants are almost touching, then they'll be happy. What I typically do is I'll typically have one per tray. So I'll have it down as low as I can, that where it hits all of them, and then as the plants grow, I'll just keep on raising it up and raising it up and raising it up. And I typically just use, I just have some twist tie that I can reuse over and over again, and I just, shorten it up each time, and I just tie it off a little higher. So that's, low light won't kill them, but it'll make them weaker and more susceptible to getting killed off. In the northern hemisphere, a good south-facing window will typically do the job as long as you don't have a big overhang over it to provide shade. If you're in the southern hemisphere, Australia or whatnot, then it would be a north-facing window. So we've got overwatering, underwatering, dampening off, light. Temperature is another one. And so other than extremes, the temperature isn't going to kill the plants necessarily. What it's going to do is it's going to weaken it and again make it more susceptible. So disease and pests love to attack weak plants. The best way to have a strong garden without disease and pest is to give your plants all the nutrients and all the light or protection from light that they need, some like shade. And but there are extremes. So for example, if we just had -40 in here, if I had left that window open that's right there, then chances are most of the things on the shelf would have died because they would have frozen. They just can't handle it. And similarly, I have a friend who went into their greenhouse today, and today we got above freezing, and by the time they got into their greenhouse, it was just over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which is, I guess, somewhere around 40 Celsius. So it's getting really toasty in there, and really young plants could get killed off if it gets much hotter than that. So temperature, and then the last one is um, comes down to another question that I got a lot, which was uh, last year I grew a ton of plants, but they all died when I brought them outside. Typically, what happens is you bring them outside and they look great, and you stick them in the ground. And most plants, when you stick them in the ground, they have this initial period where it's kind of like they're a little bit wilty, and that's just that's just because they've been shocked by their whole root system has been moved, and they've been put into a whole new environment. So that's expected. But what's not expected is for those plants to then turn yellow and die. And that's typically because they've gotten a sunburn. So what we have to do is a thing called hardening off. So we're going to take our seeds that in the spring, about a week before you want to start planting them out, we're going to take our seeds that we've been taking good care of. We've been watering them, but not overwatering them, and and then we've been giving them really good nutrition. So I am going to mention in a moment potting them up into other containers because this is too small for a tomato to live in the whole time. So we're going to take this tray and we're going to set it outside in the shade for an hour. That's it. And then it's going to come back inside. And the next day we can stick it in the shade for a couple hours. And then we can stick it in some dappled shade where there's a little bit of sunlight getting to it. And what we're doing is we're basically giving it a tan so that way it doesn't burn. And there are a lot of different theories on it. I like to give them a couple days of shade and then a couple days of a little bit of sun, and then I usually give them either morning or evening sun at first, like just before sunset, or just pretty much any time in the morning is usually okay, where the sun is less harsh, and then that just acclimatizes them without the really harsh midday sun. And then once you can leave them out for a couple days in a row, you're good to plant them. So that last step is a big one, and it can be heartbreaking because you can put all this work in, you can get all these plants that you are super excited to get into the ground. You've been babying them for the last 6 to 8 weeks for a lot of things, like tomatoes are 6 to 8 weeks. Some things, that I'm planting, I planted some things in January that are going to be planted in next year. So that's going to be really heartbreaking if they just die. So take the time, put them out a little bit at a time. It is a pain in the butt to bring them out in and out if you have a lot of plants, but it's worth it. Last year I had 36 trays of plants that I was bringing in and out every day, but they survived because I did it. So that's I am going to mention potting up here. So going to grab some of my poor rhubarb that I kind of dug up earlier. These are part of an experiment that these ones don't really need to survive. They were given not quite enough light, but they're perfect for this example. So now we started this with a fairly sterile soil so that it didn't have weed competition. Now we've got some roots in here. So there's the root system of one plant. Muggsy, outside later. Soon. Soon, puppy. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one of these. We're just going to gently separate it from the other ones. There we go. We've got some roots in the plant. And they're going to go into a new pot. But we don't really want to use just potting soil this time, because this potting soil, it doesn't have nutrients. If you use this, your plant's going to run out of food. You can use it, but you'll have to fertilize. So what I like to do is I will mix, I'll take the potting soil and I'll mix it with something like, here I've got this nice black stuff. So this is biochar and like vermanure, vermicompost. So it's worm compost. Lots of nutrients, lots of bacteria. It's going to help the plants start learning how to interact with the soil, so that way it can work with your soil instead of you having to fertilize it. So we're going to, obviously I would typically mix this up in another container, but for this example, I'm just going to mix up a little bit in here, and I'm going to take my plant, going to stick it in there, push it down a little bit, just give it a little bit more here. There we go. And because I've disturbed the root system, I want to give it some water. That's been potted up. That's the process. You can pot up into something like this. You can pot up into, I will probably still use a bunch of these solo cups this year, just because I still have them and I want to use them until they're dead. So you can pot up into something like that, and then you've got lots of nutrients. You can continue to feed them if they, if they start showing signs that they are nutrient deficient. So that'll be if the edges of your leaves are starting to yellow or something like that. But like if it just looks like it's not getting fed enough, it's probably either not enough light or enough nutrients. And if you realize that, oh, I didn't put anything in here, I need more nutrients, you can just take a little bit, this is potting mix, but take a little bit of compost or anything nutrient rich, and you can just put a little bit of that on top. And then when you water it, every time you water it, some of those nutrients are going to get sucked down in, and every time you water, it's just going to get a little bit more down into that root system. Nice and simple. I like to try and keep things as easy as possible. Start with clean soil on the first one, pot up into something with nutrients, ideally enough nutrients to get it all the way through to planting. And which isn't a whole lot, but you do need something. So that's now been potted up. And just checking the rest of the notes here. For potting up, there are lots of different sizes of containers. Think about the size of container that you're going to get at a good nursery. So not necessarily at the big convenience store type of locations, the Home Depots and the Canadian Tires and things, because while they have some good stuff, they're not. It's not the same as a nursery that is taking care of every plant in a really careful way, and where they know that they're going to get sold on a certain date. So a lot of small nurseries know that on May 2-4 weekend, everything's going to get sold. And if it's in too small of a container, like if I try to do a tomato in this, there's not a lot of room in there for roots. So by the time the plant is, this tall, it only has this much space for roots. They're all going to be twisted around itself, and then when you go to plant it, you're going to have to kind of break it up. It's going to disturb the roots, and it's going to be a big shock to its system. It's also not going to have a lot of room in here for nutrients, and with a really big plant taking nutrients from here, or taking water from here, there's going to be a lot of evaporation happening. It's going to be hard to keep this from drying out. You can do bottom watering, which will help, but I would recommend something at least this size, which is about 1.5 by 1.5, but this one is, they call it 3 by 3, but that's the outside, so I think it's about 2.5 by 2.5. It's probably better, and I find that this size was great. So the typical solo cup had lots of room for the roots to grow, but one really, really important thing when you pot up, I might plant a whole tray of one thing, and I'll put a couple of labels on it, but when I go to pot up, I will make labels for every single item. There are a number of ways of labeling. I've got a few fairly popular options here. One is you can get these plastic store-bought things and write on them. I've heard black Sharpie works well, and the ones that are more of a paint marker, all the other colors of Sharpie will fade in the sun. So there's those, but those are single-use plastic. They're going to break by the end of the year, and it's kind of garbage. Another option that is plastic, but that is a better plastic option, is this is an old blind, and it was getting thrown out somewhere, and I just grabbed it and I cut it into pieces, and I have a huge box of labels that I can again just write on and stick them in my containers. Another option is things like popsicle sticks. I've also just written on the sides of containers and a number of different things. Popsicle sticks seem to work well. They will break down. I would prefer to use something like, if I can cut up metal curtains, or metal blinds, sorry, then I would prefer that, because then I can use them year after year, and it's a waste product that was going to get thrown out, so that's even more sustainable than wood. And every single plant gets labeled. You're not going to remember what it was. I can almost guarantee you. And what else did... I don't think that there were any other questions. And how long has it been? An hour 20. Okay. Quick thing on selecting on how many to start. If you have, so there's 30 seeds in, 20 to 35 seeds in a lot of tomato packets. You probably don't need that many. I don't need that many. I'm going to plant that many, but I don't need that many. I'm going to give away a lot of food, and I'm going to put away food for the winter, and I'm going to end up composting a lot of food. And start with, if you're just growing, this is a good one for tomato sandwiches. How many tomato sandwiches are you going to eat? And one of these tomatoes will produce enough for 4 sandwiches with like nice thick pieces. So, maybe 2 or 3 of a variety, unless you're going to be preserving, then that's usually plenty. And you can have a few varieties, but you probably don't need a whole lot of each. And then with every single tomato, plant some herbs around it, or plant some lettuce under it. Plant things together so they can support each other, and you're gonna have a healthier garden that way. So hopefully this helps. Send questions, and if I get a bunch of messages or comments on this with questions, I can make a shorter follow-up with a part 2 of answering your questions. And I think that's all I've got. So take care, plant things. I'm going to have a whole lot of plants available for sale this year, mostly annuals, tomatoes and herbs and things, but I do have a bunch of perennial herbs and a bunch of rhubarb, which makes a great weed barrier around your garden. And I think the rhubarb is going to be priced up as low as I can, basically, which is going to be, I think I figured I could do 10 for $30, or $5 a piece for a single. So let me know if you want any. It's a great way to support what I'm doing here without just, telling you to donate money, because that's just, I'd rather at least earn it somehow. Have a wonderful time. Get some seeds in the ground. One note that I almost forgot, timing. A lot of the tomatoes start indoors 6 to 8 weeks before the last frost, or 6 to 8 weeks before you're going to plant. In my area, that's usually the May 2-4 long weekend, and so go back, look at your calendar, go back 6 to 8 weeks from there, which puts us at calendar February, March, April, May, 24th. So that'll be the 21st, will be the long weekend. We're probably going to be planning out on the 20th for most people, as long as the weather's good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. April 8th. So sometime between March 25th and April 8th, start your tomatoes. Same thing with a lot of things are in that 6 to 8 week time frame. So have fun. Don't start them too early. If you do find that your tomatoes or peppers or a couple other things are started too early, you can oftentimes cut off branches, stick them in water, and they will produce roots. For example, this isn't a tomato. This is part of a fig tree that it's just been in water and it's making roots. So there are options if your plant gets too big, and we'll talk about actually planting things later. Bye bye. Now, how do I stop it in this thing that